And so within 12 months of the year of return, I was living full-time here in Ghana. Yeah, so I spent a lot of my savings. I came with $25,000 in cash in my bank account. That was gone within, I don't know, 6 months. I also emptied out my 401k and sold all of my stocks. And that was a wake-up call for me that in order to really build a business here on the continent, one, I think, one of the things that I think many West Africans do is they pray to a white Jesus. I can't tell you how many homes I've walked into where above the master bedroom or in a picture frame somewhere, there is a white Jesus. Specifically, we're talking about Christians here. That is one reason why I do think there's this reverence for the European. So there's not much of an understanding of the world pre-colonialism. People don't know about the Moors teaching Europeans about astrology, algebra, changing the way they write. I did about a little over a year in Sierra Leone. And there were a number of things that happened. It was a domino effect.
Welcome to another episode. My name is Ivy Prosper, telling stories from Africa and the African diaspora. Today, I have a follow-up interview with a gentleman who I've interviewed here before. His name is Joe Hotagua. He is the CEO and founder of Authentic African. He worked in the tech space in the US, and he packed up his bags and moved to both Ghana and Sierra Leone and lived here for a few years and eventually went back to America. Why did he come to Ghana and Sierra Leone in the first place? And why did he pack up and leave the dream of coming to Africa? That's the conversation I'm going to dive into with him today. But before we get into that conversation, I want to let all of you know that I appreciate you for being here, and like, share, and subscribe. Make sure that you do that, because that's the best way to give your support for this channel and for all the stories that I tell from Africa. And if you're looking for someone to help you with doing some of your content, if you're looking for someone who can help you with editing, with web design, whatever it may be, Workspace Global is there to help you. They are an African-owned company that supports local African talent. So if you go to workspaceglobal.com, you can get some information about how you can get help there. It'll be linked into the description box. And if you're looking for data from Africa, you can go to Curo Africa. They have so much data to help you when you're making your move to Ghana. All of the information will be in the link in the description below. So let's get into our conversation. Joe!
Yes.
Welcome back to Ghana.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yeah. And for those who have been following my channel for a while, some of them may have seen you here before.
Yes.
If you've missed that initial interview, it is linked in the description, so you can watch the first interview that I did with him when he moved to Ghana.
Yeah.
Now we are in 2025. You've been gone you left Ghana, was it a year ago or almost 2 years?
Almost 2 years ago.
Already?
Oh, actually more than 2 years ago.
No way.
I left in May of 2023.
Wow, time goes by so fast.
Yeah, it goes by so fast.
So I don't want to spend too much time talking about the reason you moved, because we did do a long interview about that, and I want people to watch that video to see it. But just quickly tell us, why you moved to Ghana and Sierra Leone, and then what made you go back to the U.S. We'll get into that. But quickly, why did you move to Ghana?
Sure. So I came to Ghana for the year of return, not really knowing what the year of return was all about. It was just a trip that me and my friends from Sierra Leone were going to come to. The year before, we had seen a few folks here in Ghana. We saw that there was some commotion here, and we thought we should be in Ghana next year at this time of year. It just so happened that around March, we were starting to book our tickets, and we started hearing about this whole year of return activities. We weren't really sure what that meant, to be honest with you. We just were hearing year of return. And so we bought our tickets, and it wasn't until we landed that we really understood what we were a part of. And so during that trip, I had a transformative experience. I mean, the previous 3 years, I had been coming back and forth to Sierra Leone, but I had never been to Ghana. And so that trip to Ghana solidified for me that I could potentially find a life here on the continent where my friends had already done that. So those friends were living in Sierra Leone, and we all came to Ghana together. I was the only one that was living in the States when we came. And so they were trying to convince me to move to Sierra Leone. I wasn't ready for that move yet. And so, but when I came to Ghana, it became more real that I could move here. And so within 12 months of the year of return, I was living full time here in Ghana.
And so while you were living in Ghana, what type of work were you doing?
Great question. So within 3 months, I got the job at Jumia as the head of advertising for Jumia Ghana. I happened to know someone who knew the former CEO of Jumia Ghana, and they had just recently had a vacancy, and I had the opportunity to apply for the job, and I got the job. And I did that for a little over a year. And boy, was that stressful. That was a really transformative experience, the hardest thing I've ever had to do. For the least amount of money that I've ever earned in my career. I was getting paid in CDs. But I would say I would never change it for the world. I learned so much from that experience, and I'm grateful for that experience.
You know, you mentioned that it was the hardest work you did, you know, but the pay wasn't very good. You were being paid in Ghana cities. This is something that a lot of people in the diaspora are always curious about.
Sure.
I even had a discussion with someone yesterday who's considering moving to Ghana, and that was one of the things was, can she make the same kind of money that she's making in the U.S.? And I told her, no, most likely you won't. There are few people who actually do. For example, if you're the country manager or the head of West Africa division of a corporation, and usually it's a multinational corporation that has head offices around the world, that you can get those kind of huge salaries. Or if you're in oil and gas and you're at the top positions, but the average person who's a manager, you know, or if you're one of the regular staff, that the salaries are not even close.
Yeah, I mean, you guys think about the size of the population, right? The United States has 300 plus million people. I think 340 million people. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 300 million range. Ghana has right around 30 million people.
Less than California.
Less than California, the state of California. The United States is a consumer economy. So any business in the United States is going to generate a significant amount more money than any business here. Also, the average income here is around $75 a month, right? So if you take all of those things into consideration, there is no business here that would make any profit paying anyone anything near what somebody gets paid in the United States, unless it's an oil and gas, because you know that is real currency these days, or as you mentioned, a multinational which has offices all around the continent and has enough scale to be able to operate that way because they're generating enough revenue. So don't think that you can come here. Even this company, and the reason why we were paid in CDs was smart. This company was publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So I presumed that I would probably get international salary. But what they did is they had a local subsidiary. So I actually worked for a company called Jade E Enterprises, not Jumia.
I see.
So Jade E Enterprises is the local subsidiary of Jumia here in Ghana, or at least it was at the time. And Jade E Enterprises paid all of their employees in Ghana cedis. And so everyone reported locally to the country manager or the CEO of Jade E Enterprises here in Ghana. And we all had a dotted line reporting to a central person who managed, like, for example, all the salespeople in all the 11 countries. We reported to a person who sat in the office in Dubai. Wow. He was getting paid international salary. We, on ground here, were not.
Wow. So what was that like to take such a big pay cut? Because you were making a 6-figure salary in the U.S. to come to Ghana and make not even half of what that salary was. How did you manage?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of my savings. I came with $25,000 in cash in my bank account. That was gone within, 6 months of being here. I also emptied out my 401k and sold all of my stocks. So those were all things that I had to do to re-up on paying my rent, because of course you pay your rent a year in advance or at least 6 months in advance. And so the law says 6 months. They're going to charge you a year in advance, right?
You know, everything that you've just said really can be good advice for people who are thinking about moving to Ghana or any other African country, because a lot of people don't realize what it's going to really be like once you're on the ground. And those who are coming looking for jobs have to also understand the pay, that it's going to be so much less and it's going to be hard to manage. And it's a good idea to come without any debts. I often say that to people because then you're not worrying about if you are earning Ghana cities, you're not worrying about that you still have debt in dollars or pounds, wherever you're coming from, or euros, so that you can still manage living life here. Because that's one thing about in being in Ghana is even if the salaries are so low, the average Ghanaian is not riddled in debt.
Right.
The way that most people from the West and from Europe are riddled in debt because they're
Yep.
living life off of credit cards, they have loans. And so the average person here finishes university and they've never taken out a loan.
Right.
You know, it may be friends and family that helped out, maybe they made some money somehow, but for the most part, people have paid their university tuition with cash. Whereas most of us coming from the West got student loans
Yep.
to pay for school. So then you've got debt. So it's a good idea to come here without any debt to make it a little bit easier. So while you were living here, working with Jumia, you weren't there the whole time you were living in Ghana. When you left, you said you switched over to doing the content, right? Or were you doing other things too?
Well, I worked at Jumia for a year, and then after that, I actually started working for a U.S.-based company.
Mm-hmm.
So a friend of mine was working for this company, and her and I had worked together twice before. And so she came to me and said, you know, look, we're looking for somebody to manage a portion of our business. This is right up your alley. You know, she was at the time the chief strategy officer at that organization. So she came to me, and that's actually why I left Jumia. I mean, I hung on by a thread for the entire year. It was tough to stay all the way on for the year. And by the way, they're doing really well. They turned the business around. Shout out to Temi and all the guys who really worked to turn Jumia Ghana around, because it's a completely different company now. But at that time, we had, you know, a lot of turnover. It was difficult. So I got this call from a friend of mine, and during the pandemic, actually, I had spoken to the CEO. So this was an ongoing conversation. I just kept pinging the CEO every 6 months or so. You know, he's like, look, what you're talking about is interesting. We're not ready for that yet. So every 6 months or so, I'd reach back out and say, hey, are you guys still interested? So that's, you know, from June of 2020 to December of 2020, May, June of 2021, December of 2021, and then in March of 2022, or actually in February of 2022, is when the offer actually came. So there's also a story in persistence, and, you know, fortune is in the follow-up. That's something I learned a long time ago. As long as you continue to follow up, you will find that fortune. So I kept following up with this guy, and she became the chief strategy officer. She went from being a VP or SVP to the chief strategy officer. So she had some pull in the organization, and she spoke well. She spoke on my behalf. And, you know, we talked a lot about what my plan was for the organization, and I really wanted them to expand into Africa, because what they did is they helped websites monetize their inventory. So basically, if you have a number of people coming to your website, they can help manage all of that for you. And I saw that at Jumia as a challenge in terms of monetization. And I had talked to other publishers here, Pulse and some of these others, where they didn't have a full-on infrastructure like many of the US-based companies did. And these guys would come in and basically help you do that and just help you really monetize your web traffic, but then also optimize your website. A bunch of different things that would just help you make more money as a publisher. So I pitched them on the idea of expanding to Africa, as long as, like, I would take the job working to manage this team if they would expand to Africa. My goal was within a year, they bring it here. I did that for a year, and they decided they no longer wanted to expand into Africa. And they told me if I wanted to remain at that organization, I would have to move back to New York, and I was not prepared to do that at that time.
Okay.
That's when I left. When that income was gone, I was not going back to Jumia, and so I decided to pivot and move to Sierra Leone. My guest house on my property was about 85% done. I figured when I'm there in person, it could take about 4 months or so. That'll be done, and I can live rent-free here in Africa, which was like the dream, right? So, and also I'm on the board of a nonprofit in Sierra Leone. All of those friends that I had mentioned that I came to Ghana from the year of return with were all in Sierra Leone, and they were like, now it's time. You know, if you don't have anything holding you back there, you don't have your lease anymore, you don't have the job there, come to Sierra Leone. And my social media following had grown to some degree. I figured I could also pitch brands on allowing me to manage their social media for them. So I started that business when I got to Sierra Leone. So that's when I got into running my social media business full time as just my main source of income, and also pitching brands locally like banks, telecom companies, on allowing me to manage their social media for them.
Were they receptive? Because one of the things that I've noticed in Ghana specifically is that there are some businesses that are still not receptive to the idea of paying someone to help them with their social media growth. It's almost like they don't see value in it.
Yep.
You know, I once had someone say, well, what do? You just post to Instagram. Like, why? And they don't understand that there's a lot of work that goes into managing social media. How receptive were they?
Not at all. Not very receptive at all. I mean, I ran into so many challenges. I tell people this all the time. I had 77 meetings. I ended up with 3 clients. And the 3 clients I got was through a grant program that offered money to companies through small startups. And those startups had a marketing budget that they needed to spend. And so the person who facilitated those grants recommended me to them. So it just so happened that I happened to meet this person, and I had developed a relationship with him over the previous 2 years. And he saw like my platform grow. He understood that I knew what I was doing. And he said, I feel like my companies could use these services, these companies that I'm deploying this capital to. And so, yeah, but it was only for 3 months, right? They were only required to spend that marketing money for 3 months and then determine what they wanted to do with their own funds beyond that. And so I was in the United States when I started my social media agency. Month 1, I had a $2,000 a month client. Month 1, I was living in a building. I was living in a luxury building in downtown LA. A friend of mine was like, I know someone who has a record label. He's looking for somebody to manage social media for a couple of his artists. And so immediately, $2,000, month 1. When I got to Sierra Leone, I was saying, I'll do it for $1,000, because obviously 2,000 might be too much for a company.
Right.
I'll do it for $1,000. I was able to convince them to come up to $500 per month per client. 2 of the 3. One of them was only willing to do 100. But I figured if I have these 3 and I could show progress, I can pitch others. So I agreed to it. So instead of getting $3,000 for all 3 of them, I ended up getting $1,100 for all 3 of them per month. It was a struggle to manage a social media manager, like somebody who I was already paying $200 a month to work for me, and be getting basically $1,100, plus I had to pay for the platforms that I was using for posting, all of the things. And so, it took me 77 meetings to get 3 clients for 3 months. And that was a wake-up call for me that in order to really build a business here on the continent that is a business in that kind of a space, it requires you to understand the lay of the land, and have way more of a network. One of the things I was told later by someone who introduced me to one of the banks there was that had I offered to give a kickback to the person who was interviewing me for coming on to help with this, I would have gotten the contract, and they would have paid me like $2,000 a month. I would have just had to give him $1,000 of the $2,000.
I see.
So I was unaware of this process of doing business. And she did not tell me that until like 2 months ago. We just recently caught up, and she was like, and this, by the way, this happened. These meetings were happening in 2023, right? So 2023 into 2024, and so she had this conversation with me just recently, and she was like, "Yeah, I just thought you were principled. You took a principled stance, and that's why you didn't do it." She was like, "I didn't know that you didn't know that that's the way things are done here. But if you wanted to get that business, that's what you should have done." Which I don't even know. Who knows? Who knows where I was at that point, whether I would not have done that. But that is just how I would have gotten that business. Without having a personal relationship with that person, that would have been required. Even if I had a personal relationship with that person, I would have known that that's what's required. And she told me it wasn't just that particular company that would have done that. Everybody that I pitched large telecom companies. I pitched banks that are multi-country banks in Africa. Just think about who those banks are. I pitched all of them. Right, you know who those banks are, and they're all located in Sierra Leone. Think about the telecom companies. You know who they are. They're in Sierra Leone. And I was told that had I done that, I would have gotten those contracts, and I didn't know any better.
That's interesting, because that is another example of living in another country when you don't know how things are being done, and people coming from places like the US, Canada, UK, Europe, some of them have no clue as to some of these practices that we would see as being like, that's not ethical, that's not right. But people see it as the norm. And it definitely can be a hindrance to your progress because you don't know about certain things.
Absolutely.
And they're not going to tell you, they just assume that you know.
Exactly. Yeah. And
especially because you are Sierra Leonean, you're American, but you're also Sierra Leonean.
Right.
So they probably just assume, well, this guy's from here, he should know this.
100%. And that's what happened, right? I mean, the person who even made the introduction to the country manager of that organization, she figured I knew that and that I would know this is the side deal that I'm supposed to do. And she was shocked that I was unaware. And so, yeah, that's definitely, and I think being on the ground is super important for extended period of time over multiple trips, right? As much as I had friends on the ground, all of those friends worked at NGOs. They didn't work in the for-profit space. So all of the stuff that they didn't require that. I'm in sales. I'm pitching brands to spend money. And so they were unaware, and they may have known to some degree, but the specifics of how you set up that kind of a deal is something that I would have only have known had I gone through what I've gone through, right? There's no way I could have known that just stepping in there without that knowledge. And it took me, a year, 77 meetings, 3 clients to understand that there was so much more that I didn't know. And as time has gone on, I've learned a whole lot more, and I'm able to apply that now. And the circumstances are much different, but I'm not full-time on the ground here. I'm here, every couple of months or so for about a month, where I continue to build and develop those relationships and learn how to move around some of those ways of doing business that I just don't feel good about, And so, but it takes a little bit longer to develop those relationships, and you have to be intentional. That was one of the things that I don't think I did every trip that I came to Sierra Leone. I was just coming from my house. But prior to 2019, I never actually presumed I'd be living there. So I didn't think about building a network with people that could potentially employ me to some degree, or that could hire me as a contractor or my business. And so now I have that in mind. And so I'm much more intentional with my conversations in terms of what my plans are, what my goals are, and what I do. And so that, because it's not really it's not what you know, but it's also not who you know. It's who knows what you do well and who can speak about you in a room when you're not around, so that the other person who might need your services can ask them for a referral.
Right. This is all interesting dynamics, and I'm curious to know, is Sierra Leone, because you talked about who you know, because in Ghana people always talk about who you know. Is it the same how in Ghana people are very much into the schoolmates? Are they like that in Sierra Leone too? Because everything is schoolmates, my schoolmates, and when you come from the outside, so if you're a diaspora person who comes, you recognize that because that's kind of an advantage that they have. They'll be like, oh, I went to school with so-and-so. They have WhatsApp groups with their schoolmates, so they're staying in touch. So whenever they need favors, when they need to do something, they always have someone they can call upon. But when you're coming out from outside as a diasporan, it's really difficult. And what makes it the added layer of difficulty is if you're a diasporan who actually comes from that country. Because for me, I am Ghanaian, but I was raised in Canada. And then when I moved back, there's an assumption that you have a network already, or you just know because you're Ghanaian, and that makes it the extra like, what do you mean? I'm supposed to know? I don't know. And they just assume.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's schoolmates, yes. Especially colleges, I think, in Sierra Leone too.
Okay, so I see that in America and Canada with the colleges, university, because you're an adult by that point.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so one of the challenges we have in Sierra Leone is brain drain, right? So very different from here, where schoolmates, a lot of people, even if they go away to college, they come back, right? And so you have these groups of people who grow up and move together. In Sierra Leone, you have brain drain, and so many people do leave. But those who do stay, they do build a really strong camaraderie. So there is definitely schoolmates or just people that they've known their whole lives. And people there's nepotism, and then there's also like, my friend got this role even though they were completely unqualified, right? It happens very often. And I think there's also a sense of, there's an assumption of arrogance because so many Americans are arrogant when they come here. And I think sometimes from their perspective, they could see confidence as arrogance. I would say I'm a very humble person. I think most people who know me would agree with that. But I am confident in who I am and where I want to go and what I want to do. And so I think sometimes if my communication is very clear and concise and specific about what I'm planning and what I want to do, I think it can be misconstrued with so many others who come who are arrogant and have this American exceptionalism, which I don't believe in, right? But how do you understand the difference between the two when it's just both JC? In Sierra Leone, we say JC, just come. So we're both JCs. I'm a JC, that other person's a JC. We're all JCs. So I get bucketed in with that. And I think that was another part of it too. There's also a little bit sometimes of an aversion to that, which is interesting because the expats who are not Sierra Leonean or not even African, right? The European expats do not get afforded that same viewpoint. In fact, they're revered, whereas some of us are looked at negatively.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, when you bring that up, because that kind of stuff happens in Ghana. And it is a conversation that, I don't always talk about, but it is a reality that, first of all, let me just say this. The expat terminology that's used for white people, and this is around the world, they'll call white people an expat when they've moved somewhere. And then the black people, the ones who come to Ghana or Sierra Leone, they'll call them the diaspora and stuff because, yes, that whole thing of being connected to the continent. But anywhere around the world, it's like if a black person moves there, they're now an immigrant. And when a white person moves somewhere, they call them an expat. Like, they're also immigrants. Like, people don't put that immigrant label on them. Like, if a white person has moved from Italy or from France or wherever to Ghana, they'll call them an expat. But you've immigrated to this country, so you're also an immigrant. So I just wish that dynamic would change, but it's already like stuck as the language that's used when describing them. But I'll talk to with Ghana, because you mentioned about people revering them. I've seen it's like a post-colonial mindset thing where people still hold them to a higher standard or a higher bar than our fellow black people, and even giving them, like, accommodating them in certain ways. An example is when I was saying to someone the other day, regards to speaking Tree. So for those who don't know, as I said, I was born in Ghana, raised in Canada, but my mom always spoke Tree at home, which is one of the Akan languages, one of the most common languages in Ghana, but there's several languages in Ghana, but it's one of the common ones. So when I'll speak Tree, Ghanaians will start laughing. They'll be laughing at me. And laughing like, oh, the way you said it was funny. And I'll be like, rather than laughing at me, why don't you just correct me if I've said something wrong? Just say, oh, it's good you're trying, and then tell me how I'm supposed to say it if I've said it wrong. But if a white person starts speaking Tree, they're not laughing at the person. They're like, hey, did you see that? Hey, Obroni speaking Tree, hey. And then they celebrate them. And you'll see them go viral on TikTok. They'll be like, hey, look, watch this Obroni speaking Tree. Look. Hey, wayade, hey, Otimika Tree, hey. I don't want to know country. And they'll be looking through the phone and all excited. Then they'll forward it to a WhatsApp group. Hey, this white man speaking Tree, so cool. I like it, so nice. Wayade, hey. But then come me, Ivy, to come and speak to you. Hey, at the same, but some talk mango or shop, no more be hey, what kind of tree is this? And they start laughing. Aren't you a Ghanaian? You can't speak Tree. And it's like, but I left here when I was 2. So you have to expect that I left here at 2, So the fact that I can even say something, you should be happy and tell me what I'm saying wrong or how I'm saying it wrong. Instead of making a whole big joke out of it. But you'll celebrate the white person who's able to speak it, but you won't celebrate your fellow black person, Ghanaian, who left at such a young age that you would have thought she wouldn't even know. Because I know so many Ghanaians who live in Canada and the US that don't know how to speak any language. They grew up there just like me, and they don't know how to speak anything. All they can say is Akwaba at the same, and that's it.
And that's me. I have 2 thoughts on that. One, I would say in Sierra Leone is very similar. I've heard all kinds of things about my Creole. So somebody said recently, rest in peace to your Creole, right? Like just jokingly. It's like a moment of silence. That's what she said. She said a moment of silence for your Creole. And yeah, growing up, and this is a conversation we're having more in the different communities in Sierra Leone. But I have a theory, though, on this post-colonial viewpoint of the European in Africa. There's two pieces to it. One, I think, one of the things that I think many West Africans do is they pray to a white Jesus. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed white Jesus. I can't tell you how many homes I've walked into where above the master bedroom or in a picture frame somewhere, there is a white Jesus. So if your Lord and Savior looks like that, then you don't feel like you are reflected in that. You think that that's who your Savior is, right? If he's a white Jesus, right? Blonde hair, blue eyes, you know that picture I'm talking about, right?
I know the picture.
There are pictures everywhere, right? And so when you think about that, that's one thing. I think that that's a really important distinction that I think that people should really think about here on the continent and those of us who are coming here. Because I give grace to those people because if your whole life, your whole existence revolves around religion, and we are very religious people, West African, whether you're of the Islamic faith or you're the Christian faith, and specifically we're talking about Christians here, that is one reason why I do think there's this reverence for the Europeans. There's almost this belief system that they are above and ahead of us because they've thrived in the Western society. So that's one. I think two, they are our former colonizers, right? And so there's not much of an understanding of the world pre-colonialism. People don't know about the Moors teaching Europeans about astrology, algebra, changing the way they write. Do you know that all of us in the West, you in Canada, me in the United States, would have been writing in Roman numerals if not for the Arabs coming there? If not, 700 years, the Moors were in, Arabs and Africans, the Moors were in Europe, bringing all of these things to Europe. And so what they think that they have brought to us was already here. There were universities here in the 1400s. These things that Europeans that took them out of the Dark Ages. You'll notice that they'll talk about the Renaissance period. They talk about the Dark Ages, but they don't talk about how they got there. And it was North Africans, West Africans, Sub-Saharan Africans, and Arabs that came to Europe that took them from the Dark Ages into the Renaissance period, right? They took them out of what they called the Dark Ages. That knowledge is not too well known, I don't think, here on the continent. And so I think there's only the post-colonial mindset plus the whole idea of that white Jesus. And then the third piece of that is the NGOs that are here. Every major disease, every major famine, every major emergency, there's an NGO or a nonprofit run almost exclusively or mostly by people of European or Anglo-Saxon American descent. And if those people are saving you from diseases, from famine, from war, from whatever, your Lord and Savior, and you have the post-colonial mindset, it is hard for them to see us as we are as powerful as we actually are, and more likely to see them as powerful as they think they are. And so I do give some grace because there's so much rooted in that. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about this, living here, living back in the States, being back in my old career and being back in that world. But I spent, 4 years on the continent, and I would see these things happen where somebody of European descent would walk in after me and they would ignore me and move straight to that person to service that person. And I'm like,
that has happened here too.
We're in order. Yeah. There's an order here. I'm standing right in front of you. How could you possibly? And I'm like, oh, I see. Because they look like that. That's why you're doing it. And I give a little bit of grace, but I try as much as I can to educate so that we can see that there's a problem here, and only we can fix that, right? I went off on a tangent a bit, but that's...
No, it's fine. You gave a lot of great information, valuable information that you shared there. So, and it's a perspective that opens the mind to understand why people might think the way they do. So that was really good. I'm glad that you said everything that you said. Yeah. It's interesting because my mom used to always tell us that Jesus wasn't white. from when I was a kid, my mom would say Jesus wasn't white. The Bible, when you read it and they describe him, this man was not a white man. Plus, when they describe where he was from and all that stuff. So she's like, yeah, you're going to, because we went to Catholic school.
Okay.
So you're going to Catholic school, but when you go there, just know that Jesus was not a white man. Those pictures you see, that's not really representative of him. So I always had that in my mind. So I also don't like when I see it all over Ghana too. I see the white Jesus pictures everywhere and stuff. So, but thank you for sharing all the stuff that you said, because it opens up the mind as to why people may think the way they do. And then the education system hasn't changed. The education system is largely done under what the colonialists left behind.
Absolutely.
And they continued with and made just some slight adjustments.
Absolutely.
So I can understand. And then we have private schools that are, British international schools, U.S. international schools.
Yep.
So they're using school systems from other countries. So it's understandable why somebody will be trained up thinking a certain way.
Absolutely. And I do want to make one point of correction. I said blonde hair, blue eyes. It's brown, flowy hair, not blonde hair.
Yeah, we see
so
the
picture is the brown, flowy hair, like long hair, brown, flowy hair with the goatee.
The hippie look,
the hippie look. Yeah, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I do want to make that correction. But yes, it still looks like a European Anglo-Saxon for sure. It does not look like Middle Eastern or wherever we would say the Bible depicts him to have been from. And as you mentioned, the description of him looks nothing like what the picture looks like. Right.
Yeah. So, how long were you in Sierra Leone before you finally decided, you know what, it's time to go back to America, the place that you left behind?
Yes.
What shifted to make you say you're going back?
Yeah, so it was about a year. I did about a year a little over a year in Sierra Leone. And there were a number of things that happened. It was a domino effect. It was my laptop crashing with 15 interviews that I had done that were edited and gone. But my laptop crashing wouldn't have been an issue if I had an external hard drive. But of course, I was waiting till I came to Ghana to get the external hard drive. And, I also didn't pay for a step-up, step-down converter at my house, which is what caused the laptop to crash. And it was just so many things that financially, that living in the States, it's not even a thing I have to think about, right? If I have to pay $75 for this step-up, step-down converter, I'll buy it. I'll get it. I'll send it, right? With my old salary. Living on the continent and where I was at that point in time, financially, I just was not in a place to be able to buy all of these things that would make my life easier, but would also protect me from future challenges. And so by not having those finances, things got progressively more challenging for me. And I realized that if I wanted to be able to offer the value that I do to the people who watch the content, if I wanted to be able to come back in a place where I am more prepared to, one, finish building my house quicker and really take the next stage of my career and that leap into the next stage of my career, I had to go back, recalibrate, and really refocus my energy and my attention on how I was going to move forward. It was not going to be from the guest house, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, where we had light maybe 2 hours a day, sometimes for 3 days straight. Like those things were counterintuitive to really being able to provide the value that I need to, and to be able to build what I wanted to build. And so, it was seen as a failure in my mind at first. So it took me a while to come to grips with the fact that I do need to move back to the States, but not permanently, right? I had to move back to recalibrate, to come back. But because I had built my entire platform on moving to the continent, there was a little bit of shame. There was this feeling of failure, right? I almost everything I put my mind to, anybody around you can attest that I follow through with it. And with Authentic African, this platform in particular, it was the first time that I had really seen something through to growing to something that I could really be proud of, right? Like being consistent every single week for years. At that point in time, it had been up to 3 years, and with the YouTube channel, but 5 years at that point with the Instagram page, that I had been consistent like that for any one thing. I had never done anything like that before. And I was so proud of it. And I was like, well, what happens now with this platform called Authentic African if I'm in the United States? And so I had to think about how I was going to recalibrate, what I was going to do, where I was going to work, how can I make sure I'm coming back so I can still offer that value, so I can have conversations like this, I can interview people, I can still be doing vlogs about the house building project and all of that. And so it took me about maybe 3 or 4 months of all of those kinds of thoughts running through my mind, planning it out. And I really came to the realization really mostly when my father got sick. It like kind of accelerated that thought process, because if I'm just going to be honest, I didn't have the funding to be able to help pay for him to fly to the States. I had to get assistance from family.
Because he was in Sierra Leone.
He was in Sierra Leone. And even for my own flight, you know, and like that was never something I ever had to do. You know, I had been helping my mom at one point for a couple of years with her mortgage, about 5 years or so. I'd lived in luxury apartments in New York and in LA. You know, I was paying $3,600 a month in rent at one point in time, which is unadvisable for 5 years, right? I would not advise anybody to do that. But I was living that kind of a lifestyle, came here, completely shifted my mindset and was focused on a singular mission and a goal. But then all of these things started to pop up. And if it was just for me living on my own, I think I would have probably stuck it out a little longer. But when this happened with my father's illness, I knew that I was going to have to be more involved. I was going to need to be physically there to support. And there was probably going to need to be some financial support as well. And so it culminated in that moment, really. And that was kind of the moment that said, okay, I have to make this move back to the States.
Right. So a large part of it was financial.
And yes, absolutely.
Financially driven. And kind of pushed over the edge due to your father's illness.
Right.
So that lesson is one that is a huge one. Absolutely. Again, for those people thinking about moving to Ghana, moving to Sierra Leone, moving to Kenya, moving to Gambia, South Africa, all of the people who are leaving the diaspora to move to different African countries, to know about the financial challenges you might face if you don't have a plan in place, or if you don't work for a company that's paying you some salary in your home currency. Because there are some people I know here who are making money in their home currency.
Right.
Some who are working as nomads, digital nomads, so they're able to do it, sustain themselves. So plan, and think about illness, because a lot of people don't think about that too. Mm-hmm. If you come here and if you get sick, because I spoke to a woman who told me about how her mom got sick, and then they had to, really come up with the funds to take care of her here in Ghana. And then there was a woman online that I saw who said that she's raising money for cancer.
Really? I saw that too. I know who you're talking about. I don't remember her name.
I can't remember her name either.
Yes, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so thinking about those kinds of things when you come to Ghana or Sierra Leone or whatever African country you choose to go to. So once you decided to make the move and you went back, how did you feel? That's
a great question. So the crazy thing is, when I left to come to the continent, it was in the middle of the pandemic. I did a going away party. And we went around the room and everybody did this whole like, Joe, this is what you mean to me. And here are our conversations throughout life and all that kind of stuff. And it felt like, man, this is like a goodbye forever. I'll come back to visit, but I'm never coming back to the States. And I kind of left with that attitude. And when people would talk to me throughout those 4 years, I'm like, I'm not coming back. This is like, I'm here. So moving back felt like I mentioned, it kind of felt like a failure. And I was actually celebrating my 40th birthday when I moved back. My return to America and my 40th birthday coincided with each other. The crazy thing was, I was not financially in a place where I could do it somewhere that I wanted to do. Like I had this dream 15 years ago that my 40th birthday was going to be in Saint-Tropez, private jet, we're all gonna go, I'm paying for everybody, we're doing this big. And meanwhile, I could barely book a space. My roommate had to give me the money to help me book that space. And so, and of course I paid him back. But there was that piece along with the fact that like I did not want to leave, I had to leave, And so, one of the things that I used to say when I would come to West Africa and go back to the States is I would come back to the States with a renewed sense of purpose. I felt energized when I was leaving West Africa, specifically Sierra Leone at the time, and then when I had gone to Ghana. So I felt drained, really. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. After all of and so I was thinking about all those things when I'm like walking in to the space that I'm going to have this party in, and everybody who was at the going away party, almost all of them, were now there at the welcome back party, and it's my 40th birthday, and they're happy that I'm back, and I'm not happy to be there. And there was a couple people who I had conversations with. It was like, you seem depressed, like you're not happy to see us, like, you're not happy to see us, like we're glad you're back. You've been gone for a while, and prior to that I've been gone for 4 years. I lived in LA for 4 years. Then I lived on the continent for 4 years, and then the pandemic was a year in between. So it was 9 years since I had lived in New York full time. And so for them, no one saw it as I failed. They were like, finally, Joe's back. You know what I mean? And the way I saw it is like it was a failure. I walked into that room thinking like I failed. I did everything the wrong way. I'm the hardest on myself. I definitely
Most people are.
Yeah, and I think most people, and you should be, actually. And I have these dreams and goals and aspirations, and when I don't meet them, I really do hold myself to account for that. And so that's how I felt. Walking into that room, that's what I felt like. And for the next month or so, I really did a lot of deep reflection on my plan for coming back. And, I went through a bunch of different ideas of what I was going to do when I got here. And what I landed on was, I have this audience. I've been growing this audience. My goal is to make sure that other people are better prepared than I was when I left and I made that emotional decision. My story can be the story to show you what not to do. Now, some of the areas, I did some things that did work, right? I ended up getting a job. I networked well. I started a business, and I did the research I needed to. I closed some clients. So I had some wins, right? Something that I can lean on to say, I did learn some things. I also interviewed a ton of people who had done it the right way and who had businesses that were working, who had successful lifestyles here. And I had really gained a ton of knowledge. So I learned a lot, I experienced a lot, and so what I determined was my goal now is to teach my audience what to do differently than what I did. Learn from my mistakes, and then I'm also going to help you learn from those who did it the right way. And so that's why I'm working on a course, and I have so many partnerships with people who are here, who have businesses, so that I can guide you to those people to make sure you make the right move. So for example, if you want to move to Kenya, I have a partnership with someone in Kenya who can help you move to Kenya. If you want to move to Nigeria, I have a partnership with someone in Nigeria. If you want to move to Ghana, I have partnerships with people in Ghana that can help you move to Ghana, so that they can talk to you about whether or not you are ready to move. I didn't have that kind of a conversation before I decided to come to Ghana and before I even decided to go to Sierra Leone. And so either through consultation, I can help people understand what it's going to take, or through talking to those folks that I partner with that can also help you know what it's going to take or whether or not you are ready. And so that's kind of how I pivoted. And so in the time that I'm spending in the United States as my main country of residence for about 80% of the year, I will use that time to help other people make the best decisions for moving to the continent. And so that was like a big moment of change for me, is take my experience, which seemed negative, and turn it into something positive, right? And so that's where I landed, and that's what I'm in the process of doing today and what I'm doing with folks today.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, before we, wrap up our conversation, I want you to talk a little bit about what you're doing with your company, Authentic African, because you mentioned the course and everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm in the process of finishing my course for moving to Ghana, right? Because I didn't do it the right way. And so I'm partnering with different folks like Ghana Bound and others who are helping with understanding the real estate market, rental market, others who are going to help you understand what kind of residency you need, all the different things pertaining to making sure you get a bank account, all those kinds of things that you need to do. I luckily worked at a company that helped me facilitate those processes, but most people don't. And so like what steps you need to take. So that's one thing is the course. That's like a super important thing, and I'm doing that. Consulting. I had been consulting folks on what decisions they should make if they're ready to move. I now am really pushing that a whole lot more. If you want to move to the continent, you should have a conversation with someone who's been through it. Like Ivy does consultations as well, right? She lives on the continent. She's been living here. I do consultations. Talk to someone who lives on the ground, who has been through what you are planning to go through or have no idea what you're going to go through, because you don't know what you don't know. So you should definitely be talking to someone. So I offer consultations as well. And then, as I mentioned, I'm partnering with different folks who are going to help facilitate the process to travel, move, and invest and or start a business on the continent. And so those are all the key areas that I am now helping folks with. So it's not just the social media platforms and posting content and bridging the gap between these two groups. I'm now taking it a step further and helping those people leave the social media platform and talk to people that are on the ground and partner with people on the ground for different things. So that's my goal now, is to be the bridge between those of you in the States and the continent of Africa. That's really my goal. Or those of you in the diaspora, I should say, because there are folks from the UK and other parts of the world who tune into the content. And so my goal is to be that for you. And so, yeah, stay tuned for that. I mean, the Authentic African website is being transformed to a site to kind of facilitate all those things. Your one-stop shop for everything visiting, moving, and investing on the continent of Africa. So that is where I'm going. And that's where I have been going over the last year.
Okay. Now, you've traveled to a few African countries.
Yes.
What has been your most interesting experience?
That's a good question. And so just to run through everywhere I've been: Egypt, Tanzania, Gambia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria. I think those are all the countries that I spent more than a couple of days in. I've been to Ethiopia as well, but I only spent one day in Ethiopia. So my most interesting experience, I think the most interesting experience, I'll have to say, was the year of return, because that's what started everything for me. I've had different experiences since then, but I would not have moved to the continent had I not been in Ghana for the year of return. That was a pivotal moment in history, really, but also in my personal history. Like, that's a big part of my story. But another eye-opening experience, though, for me was going to Tanzania and seeing the number of tourism companies and how we in West Africa can do better. I mean, Ghana's done a great job with the year of return, and that's helped a lot with tourism. But I see a country like Sierra Leone, and even going to Gambia, seeing their tourism has actually done really well for the size of the country. I mean, you see like the way that they fully monetize tourism in the same way that you see in Latin America and, like, you know, different countries, or you see in the Caribbean, right? Like Jamaica, I think, is run basically by its tourism.
They are kings of tourism.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the all-inclusive resorts and all that kind of stuff. And that's something I think we have to be better at in West Africa. So just from a standpoint of like tourism, because tourism equals so many other things: jobs, business, moving, all kinds of different things. And I think if we do a better job of that here in West Africa, I think we can all see us get back to a rightful place on the world stage. But yeah, Ghana, I would say, was the most impactful. But I think after moving, the most eye-opening was the trip to Tanzania.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I do want to go there one day. Tanzania.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I see all the beautiful pictures and videos.
Yeah, it is.
And it looks like a great place to, even for people, it should be a honeymoon destination even.
Absolutely.
You know, because you hear about people going to Hawaii and the islands, the Caribbean islands. Mm-hmm. Tanzania should definitely be one of those top spots based on what I see. Yeah. Well, it has been really good talking to you today, catching up where he's at now. Because so those of you who've seen him on my channel before, now you see like so much has happened in the last couple of years. Yeah. So what's next?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say just all of what I mentioned before. I am shooting a ton of content, interviewing a ton of people. The course material is coming. I'm taking a while to get it done because I want to make sure that it's everything that you need to know. It's gonna be overwhelming with information. I think at this point I shot with one partner. I've already shot 14 different lessons. I think I'm about 25 lessons, 3 sections, 7 modules on this course. And I've taken over $60,000 worth of courses and private consulting in my lifetime since leaving college. So I have an idea of what should be in these kinds of things. So the course is on its way. That's for sure coming. You can also expect to see content from people who've moved to Ghana, moved to Sierra Leone, more about my house building project and the 4 different contractors I've gone through building a house. So you guys will get a chance to see that. You'll see a lot more from people who built developments here in Ghana and in Sierra Leone, major developments, things that you can invest in. And then you'll see more with me discussing with people who have decided to help other people make the move to the continent. So you can expect that. And the website will be updated, but I think you can just follow me, anything Authentic African related. So you can go to AuthenticAfrican.com. Right now it's an e-commerce store solely where you can buy products ethically sourced and made on the continent, but you can buy it in the diaspora, in Europe and in the United States currently. And eventually it will be that plus all the things we just talked about. So you can just keep going, check back there, and also check me out on YouTube. I would say YouTube is the platform where you'll get the most from me directly. So check me out on YouTube where you'll see all these conversations. An interview with Ivy will be coming soon.
Yes.
We just recently caught up ourselves because we had done an interview at that time, right?
Yeah.
When I had first recently moved to Ghana. And so we're doing an update with Ivy. And then there's so much more to come.
So much more. And the two of us are also, for those of you watching, just a reminder that the two of us are doing bi-weekly news from Ghana as a live stream every other Monday at 9 p.m. GMT.
Absolutely.
Yes, and that's been really good so far.
Absolutely, yes.
Good news and conversations.
Yes, and I'm glad you were able to do it. You know, we were talking about this for a little while, and I'm so happy that I have Ivy. Because, you know, you guys may not know this, but Ivy was the person who helped me do my first live stream. I've done it's close to 300 live streams since then. Yeah. Because if you think about it, I've done one every week for 4 years. That's 200.
And now you're doing a couple of weeks.
Sometimes I do 2 weeks, sometimes I do 3 a week.
Yeah.
So I'm almost at 300 live streams that I've done.
A master of live streams.
It is a process for sure. And you were the first person to help me set up StreamYard. You remember that conversation we had?
I remember.
So, you know, I really want to say thank you to you. So many people, you guys have no idea how much Ivy has been involved with. And I know this is her interviewing me, but I just want to make sure I mention this publicly. You know, Ivy was so helpful and instrumental to me understanding how to do the live stream game. And that was really helpful for me when I was at a point where I did not have content to shoot and I only could go live. And she really helped out with that process. And all of the content that you saw from the year of return and beyond the return, like most of it was shot on Ivy's phone. Right? Yeah. She shot all that content. Anybody you saw that came here, Ivy was shooting that. So props to you and thank you to you for all you do. Yeah, so thank you to you, Ivy. I really appreciate you.
I really appreciate you too, and thanks for making the time.
Absolutely, of course.
So this has been a really, really good conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Don't forget to go and follow him on YouTube, on Instagram, Authentic African, to check out all of the things that he's doing. And as for me, don't forget, as I said at the top of the conversation, to like this video, share this video, and to hit the subscribe button. Because I actually went into my analytics and I saw that 80% of you who are watching my videos have not subscribed. So hit that subscribe button. You're watching, so why not subscribe and hit notifications so that you don't miss any of my future uploads. Again, my name is Ivy Prosper, telling stories from Africa and the African diaspora, and I'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.